Buongiorno, parleremo in inglese, visto che abbiamo Emeric Lhuisset che è francese, ma faremo la conversazione in inglese. Dunque, benvenuti, se volete venire avanti per sedervi potete. Thank you, Emeric, for being here with us today. Emeric is a visual artist and photographer. He holds degrees in both visual arts from the École des Beaux-Arts de Paris and geopolitics from the Université Sorbonne. He also teaches at the Institute of Political Studies of Paris and hosts conferences about contemporary art and geopolitics. He lives between Paris and the Middle East. His works has been shown in numerous exhibitions around the world, from the Tate Modern in London to Museum Wolfgang in Essen, Institut du Monde Arabe in Paris, Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, and many others. He won the British Journal of Photography International Photography Award, the B&W Residency for Photography, the Leica Prize, nominated for the Prix Pictet, and many other prizes and awards. As a photographer, Emeric combines geopolitics with art by raising questions about the representation of conflicts. His projects have taken him to Syria, Afghanistan, Colombia, Iraq, and Ukraine. Through his art, he raises questions about the representation of conflicts and how we perceive it, leading us to investigate the perception of reality and its representation. His practice is diverse and ranges from restaging paintings from the 19th century to temporarily transforming fighters' weapons into everyday objects, as well as transforming soldiers into representation of themselves, exploring the link between video games and war zones, and above all, exploring the value of the images in our society and the importance of personal identity. We would like to focus now on the way the war is normally shown through a contemporary look. While to show armed conflicts, photography of the event prevails in the media. Everyone has a smartphone, and this allows at any time to instantly capture the broadcast what people are facing. We are all wondering, is it still relevant for the war photographer to try to capture the event? The expert of the image must exist more than ever to verify authenticity, to identify, to research, to investigate, also in an approach that could be described as post-documentary with a more conceptual reflection. Emeric, through his plastic work, invites us to question the representations of war, or as Clausewitz called, the theater of war. I will now leave the floor to Emeric, and he will present and introduce his work, talking obviously about the value of the image today in our contemporary society, full of images, in order to understand the value of the image today. Merci.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be there with you today. First, I will explain you how I work, and I work mainly about geopolitical issue. And at the beginning, I start to study a geopolitical topic by the theoretical approach, reading book, discussing with experts on the topic, follow the media about a situation. And when I think I have a good theoretical perspective on a topic, I go directly on the place concerned by it, and with a kind of anthropological approach. And after, when I think I have a pertinent visions from the ground and in a theoretical point of view, I will realize, first I will think what I want to say, how I want to say, which medium is the most pertinent to use to talk about it. And I will realize a project with a transcription of this geopolitical analysis. When you talk about geopolitics, when you talk about history in construction, it brings me a lot on war places. And another things you will see also in my work, a lot of aesthetics. And this aesthetics is at the heart of my approach. Not necessarily to sublimate, but to trap the viewer eyes and to bring him to a reflection and question that I am trying to raise. The fact is that image has never had so much importance in the world, and that war is once again at the heart of the issue we face today. A phenomenon remains very little studied, is the evolutions of the image of war. This or that image of a conflict can be subject of analysis, sometimes very in-depth. But the image of war as a whole, and in particular its evolution, is very little. It's why I will tell you about this phenomenon. I will tell you about it through example of projects that I have carried out with regards to the evolution of representation of war from invention of photography until today. These projects are part of an approach situated between documentary and contemporary art. An approach that some like Alan Sekula become to terrorize from the 1970s in what we call post-documentary. The first major revolutions in war photography took place between the 19th and 20th century, with the appearance of silver film in 1884 by Kodak, which will democratize the use of photography, as you can see on this reclam from the end of the 19th century. You should know that before this invention, photography camera, it was around 25 kilo, with negative on glass plate, an exposure time of several minutes, which made it impossible to photograph a moving subject. From this moment, anyone can take photography. We will also see this particularity during the First World War, when many soldiers will equip themselves with camera, encouraged by competition set up by newspapers such as Le Miroir. You can see Le Miroir paie n'importe quel prix les documents photographiques relatifs à la guerre présentant un intérêt particulier. The Mirror pay any price, any photographic document relative to the war would present a particular interest. It was the appearance of half-ton printing at the very end of the 19th century that accentuated this revolution by making it possible for the first time to reproduce photography directly on newsprint, on a large scale, and therefore in the press. The new revolution we are facing today is not the fact that anyone can take photography, but the fact that they can take it at any time and make it instantly accessible to the whole world. The entry in this phenomenon will first take place with September 9/11. For the first time, we have an event with an international impact whose image will escape to the media. We will see many anonymous people on site who will produce images, broadcasting them on discussion forums, the ancestor of social network, and this image will be visible to any person in the world connecting to this forum. The media, therefore, lost for the first time the monopoly on the selection and disseminations of the image of a major event. Then from 2010 and the start of the Arab Spring, with the appearance of the smartphone, we show many fighters producing images and disseminating them. One of the first images that will make this turning point is the first image broadcast in the media of the capture of Gaddafi. It was taken by Philippe Desmaz, an AFP photographer. This image is a photography of a cell phone screen of a fighter, put simply because there was no reporter when Gaddafi was captured, even though there were necessarily fighters. The vast majority of media reporters to provide image of the event, shooting, explosion, corpse, except that the fighter produce image themselves, broadcast it, and the fighter will necessarily be closer of the events since he is actor, with the reporter is possibly a witness. Faced with this phenomenon, we can question the place and the role of the reporter today. And this is what I try to do with the Sheba project that I realized in Syria in 2012 with the Free Syrian Army fighter in Aleppo and Idlib area. In this video, I put a camera on the chest of the fighter. I don't produce the image. This is the fighter who produces the image. I put the camera on the chest of the fighter and ask him to film 24 hours of his life. And the idea is to live the life of this fighter during this 24 hours. When you look at the video at 8 o'clock morning, it's 8 o'clock for the fighter. When you look at it at 2 p.m., it's 2 p.m. for the fighter. You can really see the life of this fighter in real time. The idea was to get out of the fantasy that we have in the war representation in the Western society. Because if you look in the Western society, the war is very present by the media, mostly based on the event, as I said previously, but also in the movie. In a 1 hour and a half movie, you have 1 hour shooting, explosions, actions, and half hour love story. And in a video game, you shoot all the time. But what we lies, it's a phantasmatic visions of the war. And in this video, I try to show the reality of the war in this 24-hour video. This video is very boring, because most of the time, war is waiting, with the permanent tensions, because you never know if you will be in life at the end of the day. At any moment, you can have a plane who arrive and drop a bomb and kill everyone, or just you cross the wrong street and you can be shot by a sniper. But you wait. And this is what I want to show out of the event, out of the sensationalism. You can see this fighter who live his life in the middle of the war. And I also decided to revisit this video project because the things with this video project, I have some difficulty to capture the audience with it. Because when I show it in a museum, the things is the people pay a ticket to get to the exhibition and they spend 15 minutes in front of the video or half hour or 1 hour. But they will not come back another day at another time to pay a ticket another time to see another part of the video. And also the museum has time of opening, time of closing, and you can't see this 24-hour video. And it's why I decided to do a screenshot of each minute of this 24-hour. It's 1,440 images. And you can see at 7:32 morning, he's cleaning a glass. He does his bed at 7:43. He took some perfume and watching TV at 8:26. At 11:35, he decided to buy some things to eat. And At 11:39, he drank a coffee. When he tried to go to the supermarket, he realized that the supermarket is destroyed. He searched for a new one. Finally find a new one at 12:05. He buys some chips. He drying his socks at 1:32. But the war is always there, as you can see also in the previous image. You can see the destruction of the building. You can see in the corner of the rooms a gun. You can see the war everywhere. But this is the banality of the war. Our war become a boring everyday life out of this event. And when I show this project, I show it. I try to show this in this exhibition. It was only the first 500 pictures, and the idea was to confront the viewer to the situation that we are in front in the contemporary conflict. Because if you look the conflict during the 20th century, they have a lot of image, but this image, most of the time made by professional, was selected by iconograph. And after with the chief redactor, and you have a lot of media, and you can see many images with the different media. But these images have a hand. But in the contemporary conflict, if, for example, you Google war in Syria or war in Ukraine, it's totally impossible to see all these images. You have to take a choice. You have to select what you want to see. And it's what I try to do in this exhibition. They have too many images. The viewer can't see all images. You have to select which image you have to see. And now I will show you a video project. This sound is working now? Okay, thank you. I do this video during the hour battles in Syria, in Idlib area. And why I show you this video? I show you this video because you have no things to see. And it's what I am interested in this video. We are in an ambush against a column of tanks. We are with rebel fighter who attack a column of tanks of Bashar al-Assad army. And it's impossible to capture these events by images, because when you are in a countryside, it's really, really difficult to produce image. And I explain also why we have a lot of war photography, war stage. Why it's so difficult to do image in countryside battles? It's because the fighter has prey everywhere. They are camouflage, and they don't have a lot of asperity where you can hide behind. And it's very different that if you are in urban battles. When you are in a urban battle, it's easily because you have the architecture who protect you, and also the architecture impact by the war. It's a very strong illustration of the war, and it's more easily to produce image in this condition. But when you are in a countryside, it's close of impossible to produce images. And it brings us to a project that I do that I call Theater of War. And in this project, I asked the Kurdish guerrilla fighter to replace the reality as classical painting. And because the movements in this image are a bit exaggerated is the movement of the painting. The viewer in front of this image, when he look at it, say, something's wrong in this image. But at the same time, we are with world fighter on a war place of war. What is the part of reality in this image? And I asked to this fighter to replay reality as this classical painting from 1870 Franco-Prussian War. This painting we introduce as a representation that we have in war photography during all the 20th century. And in this project, I try to question the notion of reality, the construction of war photography, the theatralization of war. And the title that I use for this project, Theater of War, I use this expression introduced by Karl von Clausewitz, these war theorians from 19th century, who for the first time introduced words using for the theater, using for the fictions to talk about war. He talked about theater of war, actor of the conflict, battlefield scene. And now I will bring you from the constructions notion to the deconstructions by a project on the war consequence. But first, I will start about a video. A video that I realized when I crossed the border clandestinely between Syria and Turkey. In this video, I decided to show this video because this is a way that the refugee, Syrian refugee, took to get in Turkey. We are now on the Syrian side, and I am interested at that moment where they cross the barbed wires which separe these two territories. That moment where they become refugee. It means that 1 centimeter before they are not refugee. 1 centimeter after crossing this barbed wire, they become refugee. And all the symbolic of this situation. And you can see the border there. The image moves a lot because we have to run in this situation because sometimes they have a sniper who shoots. And that moment where they cross the border, and at that moment they become refugee. And if I tell you about refugee, it's because I decided to show you a project that I realized about refugee. At the beginning, I don't want to work about refugee. Why do a project about refugee? They have thousands of projects about refugee. One I can bring more that some other photographer already do about refugee. But at the same time, when I read an article in the press about refugee, and when I read the comments of the reader, I was absolutely shocked by the comments, where the refugees are considered by some of these people as undermen. And I think, okay, I have to do some things. I have to do some things to try to deconstruct this representation that some people have about other human. Especially because as an artist, we also have a responsibility. We have a public voice, and this public voice is a responsibility. And I start to study the different representations that we have about refugee. The first representation is based on the event. People hiking a wall to cross a border, an arrestation, or images who play with the scare of people, with the idea of invasion. A third kind of photography are images who try to be empathic. where you can see a person in the cold with a cover, or a young children alone in the dark. But most of the time, these pictures do more kind of miserabilism. And I want to get out of this representation and to build some images of everyday life, who can be the life of each of us. But the first part of the project, I decided to go on Lesbos. And in this project, I decided to work only with people that I know from before. People that I meet in Syria, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, people that become my friend. And some of these people decide to escape the war and to go to Europe. But before to join that friend, many of my friends pass in Lesbos, these islands, this Greek island near to the Turkey. And I decided to go to this island and to take a photograph of these first things that they remember when they get in Europe. And some days before I go to Lesbos, a friend of mine, Fouad, sent us an email, sent us a message on Facebook, and where he say, I am now in Turkey, I will cross the sea very soon, and I will join you in Europe. And he joined a selfie of him on a beach in Turkey. This is the last message that we receive of Fouad. He never arrived. His boat disappeared in the Mediterranean Sea. At that place, exactly, between Turkey and Europe. And this first picture of the project, it's a tribute to that friend who disappeared, but also a tribute to all these people who disappear in a kind of indifference. And after I decided to photograph these things that my friend remember for the first time that they arrive in Europe, and they all tell me about a statue. They tell me, you will see at the entrance of the port, they have a statue who looks like the Statue of Liberty. And this is very interesting because it brings us back to the European history. Because we forget that Europe is a land of migrations. During centuries, a lot of Europeans leave Europe for economical reasons, because of war, because of persecutions. And most of them go in Europe, and when they arrive, they was in front of the Statue of Liberty. And the idea is to bring back us in front of the European history. And after I decided to join this friend and do with them the more banal picture as possible. You have a Soroush and Elan here who do a selfie on a beach in Denmark. And most of the time, I show this project with the Theater of War series. Because in the Theater of War series, you can see this Kurdish fighter in a very heroic positions. And this is the same person that you see 8 years later as a refugee. Soroush that you see there, it's him that you see here, 8 years before. And I want to bring people to this paradox, because these Kurdish fighters are considered by most of the Western as heroes. This is a fighter who fights against Islamic State, who fight for us. But at the same time, they have a big part of the people who consider refugees as parasites. And I want to bring people in front of this paradox. How can you consider someone as a hero, and when he crosses the sea, as a parasite? I continue to take a picture with that friend in different places in Europe, in Denmark, in Germany. I also work about this notion of displacement, movement, related with the situation of refugee. And in this picture, we are in a refugee camp in Germany with Soran. And when Soran knows that I go to visit him, he put a wonderful Duchamp sock. And because Soran is a big fan of Dadaism, but more in literature, he's more a fan of André Breton, that he doesn't really like the work of Marcel Duchamp, but he knows that I really love the work of Marcel Duchamp. And he took this Duchamp sock by a kind of provocative approach, And after that, we have a big discussion about Marcel Duchamp, and I try to convince him how Marcel Duchamp is important in art history. And I think now I convince him, and he brings his talk with more, with a better perspective on Marcel Duchamp. And this is Hazard. One of the first things that Hazard do when he arrived in Europe, he bring an abonnement. He bring how do you say abonnement? Abonnement. A subscription. Sorry, a subscription in a fitness center. We have different places in different places of Europe, and it was a way for him to find a place to do sports, to take a shower, and it helped him physically and psychologically in this crossing of Europe, who can take months or sometimes years. And we was in the fitness center in Cologne, in Germany. And behind us, there have groups of German who do elliptic bike, and others do some punching ball. And what was wonderful at that moment, nobody can imagine that Hazard was a refugee with no paper, that he left the war, that he was fighter in the Kurdish guerrilla groups, that he fights against Islamic State in Kirkuk area. And it's what I try to do in this project. It's that if nobody tell you it's a project about refugee, you will have no idea that it's picture of refugee. It can be picture of everyday life of me, of each of you. And the third part of the project, I do it with friends who have one of the parents who was refugee. Like Ines, the father of Ines left Algeria. And Ines, she's now reporter for Le Figaro newspaper. And I took this picture who looked like something like a bit very aesthetic, a bit sensual. But if I took this picture, it's to show the arm of Ines. And if you look at the arm, there's something strange, and it's because she received 6 bullets during Paris attack, November 13. And this is a church of a small village where Sarah Hassan lived. You can see Sarah there. And the father of Sarah left the Iraq of Saddam Hussein. And Sarah now, she has a farm with horse, and she's in charge of the environment in this area. And as you can see, these pictures are blue and white. It's because I use a very old process called cyanotype. And this process is a very old photographic process from 19th century. But I modify the chemistry of cyanotype. And when you look at this picture at the beginning of the exhibition, you can see this picture blue and white, like you see there on this screen. But progressively, day by day, this picture disappears to have at the end a blue monochrome. And this blue monochrome becomes a double metaphor, a metaphor of the Mediterranean Sea, where a lot of refugees disappear. But the blue is also the color of Europe. And all these refugees who arrive, they are part of the future of Europe, and they are future Europeans. Now, I will bring you to another project. At the end of 2013, with demonstrations were taking place on the main square on Kiev, I was in Paris. I follow the news. I see they have this protest, but I don't particularly focus on Ukraine at that moment. But when I see that they are the first people shot by bullets, I realize it's not anymore protest, it's some other things. And I want to understand what's happened there. And I started to look in the different media, and I realized that between pro-Russian and pro-Western media, the analysis was totally different. But not totally different by, like, you can have sometimes like one event and with different point of view on the event. It looks like it's two different events. And at that moment, I have the sensation that something important happens. It's why I decided to go there. I decided to go to Kiev. And I arrived on Maidan, February 2014. I arrived the day when the president left. At that moment, there was no more president, no more government, no more police. The country was totally in the hand of the population. And I want to capture this very short time where everything looks possible by 100 portraits of this protester who become revolutionary. The portrait is there to capture the eyes, the positions, the attitude of each of them. But also I given a questionnaire with 2 questions. What would you like to be happening now? What do you think it will happen? The questionnaire is there to capture the hope, what is scares these people of these moments where everything looks possible. I took these pictures on the black backgrounds, and these backgrounds was a door who blocked the entrance of the city hall. And the door was destroyed by protesters. To get in the city hall, we become the headquarters of the revolution. It's why I want a very neutral background, but at the same time very symbolic. I decided to do 100 portraits. The idea to do this 100 portrait was because with 100 people, it started to be representative of what Maidan was. But also, 100 portrait is a reference to the 100 people who died on Maidan, who are called the Heavenly 100. And it's interesting with the perspective to read this questionnaire, writing by these people in February 2014. For example, that guy say, I want that Russian troops to leave Simferopol. It's all in the Putin hands. If it doesn't stop, we will have a full-scale war with Russia. Only NATO can save the situation. February 2014. With this 100 portrait and 100 questionnaire, I decided to do a book that I print on newspaper paper. This is a reference to the newspaper, and for me it was very important because if I do this project, it was to deconstruct the propaganda about Maidan. Because in the media, when you have an article, the article can be a wonderful article writing by the very famous reporter and in a very famous newspaper. You will always have people who will say, oh, it's a fake, it's propaganda. But with this project, we have very brute things like portrait and writing questionnaire. You agree or not agree with what these people write, but it's directly the voice of these people. And I also thinking this book as an exhibition. It's easy to put off the page of the book, and anybody can do the exhibitions only with the page of the book glued on the wall. The idea was to reproduce this very democratic process on Maidan, where everybody can express himself. 6 months after the revolution, I go back to Ukraine, and that time I go in the Donbass, in the east part of Ukraine, in the Donetsk area. And during the night, I put the portrait and the questionnaire in the street to show to the people who was under the Russian propaganda who was really the person of Maidan, directly by the voice of these people. With these projects, as you can see, these images are staging. And I am interested about also this question of staging. Because many people consider staging as manipulation, lying, but staging is only a process. Like a live picture, it's also a process. And with a process, you can lie, but you can also tell the truth. You can tell the truth with staging picture. You can tell the truth with live pictures. But you can also lie with live pictures. Depends of the sentences writing behind the pictures. If you look in most of the fake news, the pictures that you see are real pictures. They just change the context of the pictures. And it's interesting to see that that reflection about image exists since the beginning of photography. Eugène Delacroix, the painter, say about the photography, accuracy doesn't make true. And now to finish, I will show you the last project that I realized in Ukraine. I don't know if you remember the story of the Snake Island. The Snake Island, it's Ukrainian islands in the Black Sea. And at the beginning of the global invasions, they have a Russian boat who attack this island. On this island, it was 13 Ukrainian soldiers. And they have a radio conversation between the Russian main warship and the Ukrainian soldiers who was on the islands. I will show you the conversation.
Все. Нахуй тоже надо.
На всякий случай.
As you can see, one of the Ukrainian soldiers tell him, go to fuck yourself. And when I listen this recording, I immediately think about a painting, a very famous painting in Ukrainian history. It's this painting of Ilya Repin with a Ukrainian painter. It's a painting of 19th century who paint an event of 17th century. And in this painting, it's Zaporog Cossack, it means like Ukrainian Cossack, who receive a letter of the Ottoman Sultan who asked them to surrender. And the Cossack answer by a letter of insult. And I decide to do a parallels between the actual situations and this painting from the past of Ukrainian history. Yet this painting, so important in the Ukrainian national narrative, is in the collection of the Museum of Russian Art in St. Petersburg. In 2021, when the painting was presented in Paris for the Ilya Repin retrospective at the Petit Palais, the exhibition was entitled Painting the Russian Soul, thereby forgetting that Repin was born and raised near Kharkiv in the present-day Ukraine, and that exalted in this painting the Ukrainian identity, which was so dear to him. This appropriation of Ukrainian history by Russians is essential, as demonstrated by the text of 50,000 characters written in July 2021 by Vladimir Putin, explaining that Ukraine is merely an artificial Soviet creation and that its history is actually that of Russia. Text which he used a few months later to justify its invasion. This colonial view, resulting from Russian imperialists, appeared in the 18th century when, to compete with the great European courts, Muscovy, which becomes the Russian empires, appropriate the very ancient history of Ukraine. Systematic looting of museums, destructions of school textbook, and any work related to Ukrainian history and cultures, arrest of teachers refusing to apply the Russian official curriculum. This is the reality of occupied territory. Olga Lyubinova, Russian Minister of Culture, declared in March 2022, everything related to the development of cultural sector in the new constituent entities of the Russian Federation and their integration is an absolute priority for us. From the first day of the special military operation, representative of our museum work in the new territory. In this photo, the soldiers who is in the center there is Roman Gribov. This is the soldiers who answered to the Russian boat on the Snake Islands like a bridge between present and past. While the war intending to conquer the Ukrainian territory is visible to all, and its condemnation relatively consensual in Europe, the much more insidious war, which is being played out around the control of history and culture, remain very much unknown, and many Europeans participate, often inconsistently, to the diffusions of this Russian colonial construction. Culture is a weapon in a vast battlefield. Let's try to not forget it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Emeric. Before leaving the floor to Tomas Opitz, who is the owner of 2B Gallery in Budapest and represent Emeric, I just want to ask you something about this photograph here that is actually shown at the booth of 2B. If I'm not wrong, you posted an image of this photograph on Instagram after you produced the photograph, and the image received more than 100,000 likes, I think, in a very short amount of time.
Less than 24 hours.
I would like to ask you, what is your opinion about the relationship between social media and art, and a photograph that is included in a context of art? Because you are using social media in order to communicate your work.
Yes, I use a bit social media to communicate, but I'm not very good for that. But with this image, it was interesting because after 24 hours, I received more than 100,000 likes on this image, and this image was reposted by all Ukrainians media, and today this image become iconic in Ukraine. And, but yes, I'm interested about the role of social media, especially in the war representation, and I do a big exhibition about that in Centre Pompidou in Paris. And I use it to collect amateur image in the war, because what I realize is most of the pictures in the war in Ukraine, most of the picture of the biggest and more iconic, more important moments are documenting not by professional photographer, but are documenting by amateur, by soldiers, by civilians who are there with a mobile phone. And after they post this picture on social media, and some of these pictures become viral, and sometimes more visible than picture do by professional or by picture published by press. And I am interested about this amateur image because this amateur image most of the time is not considered by professional, but these amateur images are so important. And we are to focus back on this amateur image. But also another thing which is very interesting on social media that I spend time to analyze is the meme. It's the first time that we have a massive use of the meme in the war. We have some epiphenomenon before, but it was really a small phenomenon. But the massive use of the meme in the war starts with the war in Ukraine. And what meme are? Meme is photomontage. And photomontage is photography. And meme, it's a new kind of war photography. And yes, social media have a big plus, a very important place in the war, image diffusions. It's very important, especially for the amateur image. We are most of the time not shown in the media, but we are sometimes more visible than the image show in the media.
I will have another question, but first I want to leave. No. I want to leave the floor to Thomas, and then I will see if we still have time. I have another quick question for Emeric.
Hello. Yeah. Just to mention that, of course, this image is shown at the booth. Also, we had in a small format, but also we have these two books at the booth, so you can have a look, and if you want to buy it. But now I will change not just the sales publicity, but also a question to Emeric that we already know, or me as a gallerist, I know that there is a strong focus in France about who is an artist and how is the commitment of the artist. And in your work, there is a very strong commitment to social or political issues. So how you feel that you are accepted as an artist or just still a photographer? So how is that working in the acceptance as an artist? Because it's when you hear artist, everybody thinks at first glance about a painter, a sculpturist, or at least a video installation project. So, but you are really doing photography as an art and as a very strong commitment for social and political issues. So, how is the approach of the society there in France about this?
It's interesting. At the beginning, when I show my work in a contest of contemporary art, they tell me, oh, it's too much documentary. And when I show it in a context of documentary, they tell me, oh, it's too much contemporary art. And it was interesting because people want to bring things in case. And they want to classify things. And sometimes people say, I am a photographer. Sometimes they say, I do photojournalism. Sometimes they say that I'm an artist. And by certain kind of things, I don't really care where people want to bring me, because the most important for me is just to say what I want to say by the way that I want to say. But personally, I prefer to use the term of visual artist because it gives me more freedom and it doesn't close me in a medium. And if I want to do installation, I will do installation. If I want to do video, I can do video. If I want to do an object, I will do an object. And I'm free to do what I want. And I prefer the term of visual artist, that photographer who put me in a box with a specific medium. And as I tell you, before to do a project, I think which medium is the more pertinent to use before to do the project. I use a lot of photography because I am interested about the relation of photography with reality. And it's why I use a lot of photography. But on some other project, I can do installation and can do like many other projects. Sometimes I mix photography and painting, and it really depends of the project and the purpose of what I want to say.
And then just to mention, if you are visiting Budapest between May 8 and June 22, you will see Emeric's exhibition at the gallery.
I have a very last question. Sorry, I have a very last question for Emeric. You analyze the concept of theatricalization of war, and I remember we were talking about the last kamikaze attack in Moscow, where they were filming themselves while they were doing the attack. and this is actually kind of a theatricalization of the war by the main character of the war. So I'm wondering if you think that this kind of mania of protagonism and representation at a certain point will maybe collapse. I mean, do you think as an artist who investigate the value of image, do you think that we will ever return to a world that is not so addicted to the mania of representation, of a diffusion of images and protagonism? Do you think it's possible to go back, not to use this flow of images even through the social media, as, for example, the last kamikaze attack, or do you think we are completely submerged by the use of images in this way?
Do you think that?
Do you think, is it possible to go back to not to be addicted anymore to images?
The kind of addiction of images, especially images of the events, like a kind of adherence for the events, you know, and but a mix between adherence and repulsions, and but depends of the people, depends on, and I can tell you, like for example, with for the first year of the global invasion, I collect each day between 500 and 600 photo and video of the war, amateur images, each day. And I spend a lot of time to watch all these images, to select the most interesting, to identify, authentify. And it was very interesting, but at the same time, it's psychologically, it's hard to be confronted to these images, especially they have different things, because they have the things of the violence of these images, but also the things that I also walk in that place. I know some of the people that were in this situation. I also was in this situation, but I don't know exactly what to say with that, but it's kind of a strong impact on the population. But I think it's so important by the media today to have the capacity to capture these images and to identify, to take the more interesting and to take the control, to take back the control on this amateur image. Because if we don't care about this image, we will lose the control on this image. And this is an open door to the fake news. Yeah. And it's why it's so important for the media, for serious media, to take the control on this image, to identify, to authentify, to select the more important and to show it. Not show it when the image is already viral. Because when the image is already viral, it's too late. And I think all these images are really important. But also we have to take care to not fall also in the pornography. Like when I mean pornography, it's pornographic war images. Like destroyed body, like because it's just pornography and it doesn't bring any information. And also we have to take care about the use of the image. In which context these images are doing. Use this image. If we use this image, did we do the play of a propaganda on the group? And we have to think all of that. But it doesn't mean that it's because image do by a fighter or by an amateur, like a witness, civilian, that it means that this image is propaganda, this image. No, this image can be so strong. And for example, I remember I see some image of bombardment on a building due by reporter. The image was very clean, proper, it was aesthetic, nice, strong. And I see the same bombardment by another perspective, do with a mobile phone with a handshaking of a woman who was at the window of the building in front. And the handshaking and the voice was crying a bit, and she tried to explain what she had in front of her. And by my point of view, this image do by this woman, it's stronger than this image do by this professional. And we really have to think the place of this amateur image. And what is the place today of professional of photography, professional of image in war today?
Thank you. They're actually announcing the next talk. I thank you, Emeric and Tomas, for being here with us. And if you want, you can go to see also other photographs from Emeric in 2B stand. Thank you very much.
Thank you.